Disney Animals Storybook Collection. First story is from Moana, Puai and Hiai Hiai. The feast to welcome spring was about to start. Moana and Grandma Tala were busy collecting shells. Moana's pet pig, Pua, tried to help, but the shells he found were never empty. Moana bent down and picked up a small pink one. "What do you think?" she asked. Grandma Tala inspected it. "Yes, that looks right for a chef." Moana was making her father a surprise gift for the feast, an anklet. Moana strung the shell onto the anklet and held it up proudly. "Done," she said. "Now I can give it to him right at the start of the feast." Just then, Hiai Hiai, the foolish village rooster, ran by them wearing part of a coconut on his head. "Silly Hiai Hiai," Moana said, removing the coconut. In the village, preparations for the feast had begun. While everyone was hard at work, Hiai Hiai just got in the way. Men were busy building the umu, an underground oven. They piled up pieces of wood and the dried husks and shells of coconuts. After they started the fire, they added rocks. Hiai Hiai kept getting closer and closer to the hot rocks. "You'll set yourself on fire, you silly bird," one of the men yelled, chasing him away. Hiai Hiai ran away and stepped on a partially finished platter woven from pandan leaves. His tiny foot got trapped, but he didn't even notice as he dragged the large platter behind him. Grandma Tala attempted to catch him, but Hiai Hiai avoided her, leaving a mess in his wake. Moana and Grandma Tala stopped when they saw Chief Tui approaching. Grandma Tala immediately stepped on Hiai Hiai's platter to hold it and the rooster in place. Moana quickly hid the anklet inside her belt, hoping her father wouldn't notice. "I just wanted to see how everything was going," Chief Tui said. Meanwhile, Hiai Hiai was pecking and pulling at Grandma Tala's skirt. As soon as Chief Tui left, Grandma Tala reached for Hiai Hiai, but she slipped on the platter. Fortunately, Moana was there to catch her. Nobody noticed when the anklet dropped from Moana's belt. It landed around Hiai Hiai's neck and he dashed away. "That is it," Grandma Tala said, grabbing a hand-woven leaf basket. Hiai Hiai didn't see her coming. He was too busy pecking at a rock. In one fell swoop, Grandma Tala trapped Hiai Hiai underneath the basket and then cinched it shut. But Grandma Tala had been so focused on catching the rooster that she hadn't noticed the anklet around his neck. "You can't keep him in there forever, Grandma," said Moana. "But we can keep him in there for a little while," said Grandma Tala, "at least until we're done with the feast." Moana agreed it was a good idea. So Grandma Tala put the basket aside. Then Moana checked her belt. She gasped when she realized the anklet was missing. "Oh no, perhaps we should retrace our steps," said Grandma Tala. Just then, Pua spotted the basket. He saw Hiai Hiai's beak sticking out between the gaps in the woven leaves. When he looked closer, Pua noticed the anklet around the rooster's neck. He was determined to retrieve it for Moana. But first, Pua had to open the basket. He rolled it over and over, but that didn't work. The basket was just too strong. Then he tossed a coconut high into the air towards the basket, but all that did was knock the basket over. Next, Pua put the basket on top of a stick. Then he backed up and took a running start. Pua jumped onto the stick, and the basket went flying through the air. Plop! It fell to the ground, but the basket was still tightly shut. Pua had to think of another idea, and fast. He had to get the anklet to Moana in time for the feast. On the ground, he saw a long vine. He picked it up and trotted back to the basket. Pua looped the vine around the basket and dragged it along, running as fast as he could. Hiai Hiai's legs slipped out, and he ran to keep up. When Pua heard music, he knew the feast was about to begin. He had to do something drastic. He dragged the basket towards a slender tree and tossed it onto a branch. Then he jumped up after it. When Pua bounced on the branch, Hiai Hiai's basket flew into the air and then back down to the branch again. The higher Pua bounced, the higher the basket flew. Finally, Pua bounced so high that the branch flung the basket straight into him. The two animals soared through the air. Pua and Hiai squealed and chucked. Then they hit the ground. The basket finally opened. Pua was thrilled. He could get the anklet to Moana, but the force of the fall caused them to roll and roll and roll right into a large fishing net. Though the feast had started, Pua and Hiai rolled right up to Moana. Moana untangled them and gasped when she saw the anklet around Pua's snout. "You found it," she said, giving him a big hug. Later that evening, Moana gave Chief Tui the anklet, and he proudly put it on. "I love it," he said. As Moana and her father hugged, Pua heard a strange sound. It was Hiai. The rooster couldn't cluck because his beak was buried in the piece of driftwood. He also got entangled up in pieces of the basket again. Fortunately, Pua had become an expert on getting Hiai out of a tricky situation. The end.